just explain yesterday how you weren't able to get a deal done. Disappointed?
Well,
surprised?
basically, Fish, we felt that the offers weren't sufficient for a player of Tyreke's caliber, and particularly they weren't sufficient when weighed against the potential benefits of having him here for the rest of the season. So we decided not to do anything. I mean, there's no late second-round pick that's going to come in and average 19 points a game for you next year.
Where the team is at with the remainder of the season, what is the benefit of having him here playing?
Well, there's a human element to this. We want to keep going with Tyreke. As I'll just say that. There's limitations. What we say to him, it's been a great relationship so far. He's been extremely productive. He's happy here. I think this has been the best, time for him since he's been in the NBA. Also rekindles the memories of playing here for the Tigers. So it's an awful lot going for us here with him. We were in constant communication with he and his representatives through this process. So I think there's a real benefit for him staying here.
We'll certainly ask him when
Right.
he comes over. But how did he
again,
handle this last week?
Well, I mean, you have to talk to him, but I think we explained it to him. I think he handled it well as you can be. And obviously there's some uncertainty in your situation there. He's a pro. He's been through trade deadlines before. So, in the final analysis, we just didn't think that the offers were sufficient for a player of his caliber and for the benefit. We think it's a real benefit of keeping him here. But
Chris, couldn't you have moved him now and still brought him back?
Well, I mean, let a guy go, Mike. You might not get him back. You know what I mean?
Right.
Go to another place. Get excited about that situation. And we're the best situation he's been in the NBA. And again, we just we didn't get what we felt was sufficient to let him go.
How much of a gamble do you think?
Well, that certainly is a gamble. He could go and you don't get anything in return, but we're willing to take that on because we think he's an extremely high caliber player. It's difficult to get a Tyreke Evans. He's performed well. This is unique situations. I mentioned him back in Memphis. So we felt that was the bird in the hand was better than the possibility of what picks might mean, down the road, and very much down the road.
How do you sell this to the fans who, if they're listening to talk radio and everything else, everybody's pillaring the Grizzlies for not moving Tyreke at the trade deadline?
Well, maybe they find a little better use of their time sometimes than some of the talk radio, Jarvis. But, I mean, we all like to see Tyreke play. I mean, you come to FedEx Forum, we've enjoyed watching him here and with the Tigers. You should be glad that he's here. Again, I said, we think that this enhances our ability to retain Tyreke. And again, there's an emotional, personal side of this, so I don't see why fans should be mad at all. I mean, if picks came back, they'd be very much down the road. They'd be very secondary. And again, where those picks would be, that type of player is not Tyreke Evans. That pick's not going to come in and do what he's done for our team so far this year.
If retaining Tyreke was a serious consideration, a serious option, then why sit him over this time?
Well, because things were starting to heat up at that time, and there was a risk of him getting hurt at that point in time in the trade deadline, so we felt there was a need to pull him from competition and remove that risk. You saw that throughout the league. Players were being removed from games at that time, so that's why that decision was made then.
Has there been a conversation about any disappointment with Tyreke, thinking that he's going to a contender over?
No, he's glad to be back. I mean, he's happy the process ended up this way. You saw his social media post yesterday. He's excited about staying here in Memphis. And again, we like what we've seen at Tyreke and love to continue the relationship.
How much of a consideration was the risk between, possibly if he walks at the end of the year, then you end up empty-handed either way?
Well, I mean, that's a risk we're willing to take. For what was out there, we didn't feel, again, it was sufficient for a player of Tyreke Evans' contributions and what he could mean going forward for our team.
Chris, when you're in a situation, obviously nobody from the team is going to use the word tank, but when you're in a situation now, Tyreke is going to better this team for the last 28 games. It could
we're
hurt
not
you
tanky, Mike. I mean, look, we're committed to playing hard every night, getting our young guys to get in, develop into a winning culture, playing the right way. Look the other night. I mean, Utah scored 131 at New Orleans. We lost the game, but they scored 92 here. I mean, we were back in that game, very competitive the other night after what was obviously a very disappointing outing at Atlanta. So I like the spirit of this team, the way they're playing. Every night when they tip the ball up, all of us associated with this team want to win the game. The players, the coaches, the staff, the front office, every fan that's in the seat wants to win the game. That's what it's all about.
You say you're playing to win, but you're obviously playing.
I mean, we're not as fortified, Chris, as we were before. Obviously, there's no Mike Conley. Right? There's we're playing younger guys that don't have a great deal of experience.
Right. But you're obviously playing in a way that you're thinking about beyond this season. Otherwise, you wouldn't be playing the young kids over.
Well, but we do have a roster that we have 6 guys, I believe, my last count, that are in their third season on down to rookies, and so we're going to play those guys. I mean,
So my question is,
Right.
if you're playing in a way that you're trying to maximize yourself for next season, developing these young guys is key to that. How does that factor into veteran players like Tyreke Evans and also Marcus Gasol in terms of risk of wear and tear, risk of injury beyond the season when you're focused?
Well, but Mark,
more on next season?
we manage Mark's minutes. We've been doing that not just this year, but for the last few years, and we manage all of our players' minutes, particularly the veterans. We have a sports.
Played as much as LeBron.
We have a sports science department. We've heavily invested in, and there's some real thought to this, and so we'll be continuing to manage everybody's minutes the rest of the season. That's just the way it's been all year, and it's the way it's going to continue in the future for us.
Can you give us an example of like what kind of money you're talking about that might be able to entice Tyreke?
I can't get into that type of conversation at this time, Jarvis. You're not permitted to.
You're capped. You're capped on what you can offer him this summer, right?
Well, yeah, we'll be an over the cap team. Obviously, everybody knows that.
MLE.
But I'm not going in. I can't discuss any particulars in that regard.
Was this ultimately your call?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Solely with no input here,
Yes.
or how did that?
No, we do the input. I mean, we do a lot of input around here. I mean, we got a very extensive staff and analytics, scouts, and all of us in the front office. Everybody weighs in. I mean, we're up here all the time. But I make the final call.
So, can you go take us through that process of determining how?
Well, the process really has been going on for months, Peter. What we're going to do to trade deadline. It's not all of a sudden you wake up the morning of the trade deadline and say, see what's out there. I mean, you're talking with other teams. Generally, though, it's the same every year. The offers tend to get better, deeper into the process, and it's at the 11th hour. Teams get more serious. And so we've been thinking about this and going back and forth for a long time. And then, final analysis, we felt it's better to keep him.
Did you think the offers would get better and they didn't?
Well, I mean, you're sitting there, you don't know what the other teams are thinking about. But again, we just didn't, in the final analysis, think that the offers were, no matter what you've read and heard out there, don't always believe what you've read and heard, that they were sufficient for Tyreke's caliber of player. I mean, he's been a hell of a player for us this year.
Not even with a young guy, like let's say a guy on his first contract, a young draftee.
Well, but I mean, it's going to be things that are down the line, number one, right? Probably in the back half of the second round. So if you see too many Tyreke Evans that go in the back half of the second round, that are that caliber, call me, okay?
No,